If your child is planning to attend college or even thinks that they might want to attend college, there are all of these different things that come to mind that you need to think about, plan for, organize, get done, and it can get overwhelming really quickly. So today, to try to help you out, I wanted to give you a homeschool to college roadmap, just kind of outlining some of the things that need to be done to help prepare your homeschooler for college. So if you're joining me for the first time, welcome to my channel. My name's Abby and I'm a homeschooling mom of two. I have a junior this year and I have a sophomore this year. And as of right now, both of them are planning to go to college. So we have been working really hard over the last couple of years to try to get all of our ducks in a row to make sure that they are successful in that endeavor. Now, my channel name is My Practically Imperfect Life. And as the name suggests, I am not perfect. I am so far from perfect. So I do want you to take what I say with a grain of salt and understand that this is simply a timeline of what we have done in our family. You can certainly do things on your own timeline. You might want to get some things done earlier. You might want to get some things done later. I mean, if you're watching this and you have kids who are elementary aged, you have got lots of time to figure out when you want to get things done. You might be watching this when you have a junior like I do and go, well, shoot, I have a whole bunch of things to catch up on. It's okay. So first thing is just take a deep breath and know that no matter at which point in your child's school years you're at, you can make this happen. It's just going to take a little more effort and a little more focus if your student is farther along in the high school years. But let's take you through what we've done year by year, and I'm going to have you go all the way back to when they were in diapers. Now, all the way back to when they were little, you might think, oh my gosh, I wasn't even considering homeschooling when they were that little. Well, what I mean is that as early as possible, you do want to start thinking about how you're going to pay for college and some financial planning for college. So at whatever point you're at in your homeschooling journey, I highly encourage you to talk to your financial planner or your CPA about what is the best way to put money aside for college. So whether that's through a savings account or investments or a 529, whatever works for your family, whatever amount you can put back, the earlier you start, the better, because just like anything else, you get interest and compound interest and things like that. And so it will make a difference if you can start early. So it's just never too soon to start thinking about how it is we're going to pay for that college bill. Now we're going to shift forward in time to the 7th grade year. Now, when each of my kids was a 7th grader, I started to think ahead to what kind of curriculum I was going to be purchasing for their 8th grade year. But when I was thinking ahead to 8th grade, I was asking myself, were there any courses I felt comfortable having my kids do at a high school level? One of the beautiful things with homeschooling is that we can start doing high school level courses pretty much whenever we want. I know some students who started taking them as a 7th grader, some as an 8th grader. But when you look at your student, you know them best, and you want to look and figure out, is this going to be a good fit for them, and are they prepared for high school level work? It's of no benefit to your student to force high school level work upon them if they're not ready for it. All it's going to do is cause them frustration. It's going to cause you frustration. And since these grades matter, these are grades that go on the transcript, you want to make sure that they are prepared for it. And I'll give you an example. When my daughter was a 7th grader, I thought she would be ready and do fine doing a high school level algebra in her 8th grade year. Her brother, while good at math, really just wasn't quite ready for high school level algebra in 8th grade. So we waited and did algebra in his 9th grade year. Nothing wrong with that. I just have two different students with strengths in different subjects. And so I made a judgment call on what I felt they were ready for. Other classes that we decided to do in 8th grade that we counted as high school level work included doing a health course from Apologia. Had both of my kids do that as an 8th grader. They did a Dave Ramsey personal finance course in 8th grade that we counted as a high school credit. My son took a co-op class that was a logic course, and he really enjoyed that. That was high school level work. And then my son got a little bit of a benefit since my kids are only 1 year apart in age. When my daughter was in 9th grade and he was in 8th grade, we did group subjects together. So I was teaching high school level apologetics to both of them. So he got that credit. I was also teaching high school level German to both of them. And then we did art history as well. So they were able to get credits for things early because I was doing it with one student and the other at the same time. But look at your student and where their strengths lie and pick and choose which courses you think they can handle the high school level work at if you're going to start it in the 8th grade. All right, moving forward a little bit into the 8th grade year. Now, if you are having your student take high school level work in 8th grade, I'd highly recommend starting work on their transcript at that point, or at the very least, make sure that you have some very good record keeping, because again, those are courses that you're going to count that on their transcript. Making a transcript is not hard. Don't let anything you see online tell you that it is impossible to do. In fact, I have 2 different videos on my channel that you can check out that talk about what you should include on a transcript, and another one that shows you how you can make your own for free. It looks exactly the same as the ones you'd pay money for, just using Microsoft Word. So don't stress about how difficult it is to create a transcript. Just know that you need to start keeping good records so that way that information is ready to go on the transcript. Now, at some point during each of my kids' 8th grade year, we sat down and we had an initial conversation about what types of things they might be interested in doing in the future. What are some possible careers they have interest in? Now, I in no way expected them to make a final decision as an 8th grader, but I just wanted to see what types of options they were looking at or had piqued their interest. That would give me a little bit of an idea on what types of classes I needed to make sure that we covered in high school. If one of them had said, hey, I want to be an engineer, or I'm interested in engineering, well, those are very different types of courses than if they said, hey, I'd really like to go into nursing. And you can have this conversation with your kid every single year. I think it's really good to go back and talk about it. My daughter is an 11th grader, and it was this past summer where she finally said, hey, I think I might be interested in these careers or these majors in college. And so I had to make some changes to our plans for what it was we were going to do for classes her junior year and her senior year in order to accommodate that. So that conversation is important to start having when they're in about 8th grade, and then have it every year, because they could totally change their mind and go from wanting to study one thing to wanting to study another. And that way you can make sure that you're planning your coursework appropriately. Another thing you can do in the 8th grade year is start doing just a rough 4-year plan. Don't worry about setting anything in stone. You can flex and move things around. But what I mean by a rough plan is just kind of drawing out, on a piece of paper, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, what types of courses do you want to have each year? Do you want to do an English course each of the 4 years, a math course, a science course? How many years do you want to do history? How many years do you want to do a foreign language? You should definitely do a little research on if anything is required in your state. There are states that have requirements for homeschoolers for graduation, that you've got to cover certain things. And so you want to make sure that you check all those boxes. Now, if you live in a state like Indiana, which is pretty relaxed as far as our homeschooling rules, you can also look at the state's education sites to get kind of an idea on what area high schoolers are required to do. You don't have to follow that, but it's a great way to start or get a rough idea on what you might want to do. So I had looked at what an academic honors diploma had requirement-wise in our state, and I used that in order to start putting together that 4-year outline. And I wasn't super specific. Like I said, I just put like science, science, science on a couple of years, history, history, history. And then I went back later and I decided which science courses we were going to do each year and which types of history course we were going to do each year. Now, does it matter what order you do courses? Not always. Now, there are some classes, especially like when you're looking at math classes and science classes, some things that just go together better. For example, it's really a lot easier to tackle chemistry and physics if you've already had algebra. And if you have more questions about whether or not the order of classes matter or which types of courses might require certain prerequisites, I highly recommend you check out the video I'm going to link below. It covers that topic pretty in depth for you. So I digressed a little bit there, but the key things are have that initial conversation with your kids, do a rough outline of your 4-year plan. Now let's move on to the 9th grade. We are actually in the high school years. So if you haven't already got a transcript started, start working on that. Get at least a rough one started so you can put in your course titles and your grades and start tracking what their GPA is. This is also a good time to remind your students that these grades matter. You may have gone through your early homeschooling years and not kept grades. And if your student's not used to getting a grade for a course, just reminding them that these ones are getting sent to their colleges. So We want to make sure that we're doing our best effort at all times and, just really trying to do well in our classes. Also go back, have that conversation again some point during the 9th grade year about what they might be interested in doing or interested in studying during college. Now, I do have one curriculum recommendation, and that is to make sure that you've got some sort of a solid vocabulary program as early as 9th grade. The reason for this is that vocabulary plays such a big role in the ACT, SAT, which isn't till 11th grade year, but starting to work on building that vocabulary, building, those strong reading skills and being able to figure out word meanings and using them in context is just something that is easier learned a little bit over time. And so by making sure you've got a good solid vocabulary program early on will help them immensely by the time they get to the 11th grade. Now, if you have a student that's an athlete and they wish to try to play that sport in college, I would highly recommend in the 9th grade year to go to the NCAA site and start looking over the homeschool packet. There are a lot of requirements for homeschoolers and a lot of information you as the parent have to get ready in order for them to be eligible to play in college. I'm not going to go into all those details on that here on this video, but I do have an entire video about the NCAA requirements for homeschoolers. I'll link that down below for you as well. So if you have a student athlete who is thinking about pursuing that sport in college, I'd recommend starting early because it will make it a lot easier for you to spread out that work over the 4 years. All right, now we are moving on to the 10th grade or their sophomore year. Again, have that conversation about interests and possible careers, but now is also the time to start doing some initial college research. It can be something as easy as broadening down what states you might want to go to college in. Maybe you definitely want your student to stay in state, either because of cost or simply a desire to kind of keep them close to home. Or maybe there are certain schools that they've always been interested in. They can start researching, finding out a little bit about those schools. One thing that's really helpful is to look at their admission requirements, and you can start to get a feel for what different schools are looking for as far as number of courses or certain types of testing. We recently did a whole bunch of college visits. We did a whole little vlog about it, talking about what we learned along the way. And different schools definitely had different requirements versus recommendations, especially one school that my daughter is really interested in had some very specific requirements for homeschoolers. So by doing a little bit of research, you can start to get a rough idea of certain schools that you might be interested in later visiting or going and applying to as we get closer to college. As far as curriculum, this is a great year to make sure that their English course is really solid, that they're reading literature, that they're doing really good comprehension questions. Again, solid vocabulary program, a good writing program. It's also a great year if you want to introduce some sort of an essay writing course, like an essay intensive. We did the essay intensive from IEW. We had my daughter do it, and my son will be getting ready to do that soon. And it really helped her feel confident in writing a personal essay and doing timed writing. So if she was doing a standardized test or a CLEP exam where she was going to have a short amount of time to write a quality essay, getting comfortable with that process. And again, that idea of a personal essay, which is often needed for college applications. Now, while you could push that off to the 11th grade year, I just wanted to make sure she felt really comfortable well before we got into the realms of, hey, the ACT, SAT are just around the corner. So consider doing that as early as the 10th grade year. Now, near the end of the 10th grade year was when I started really doing research on possible CLEP exams and on dual enrollment. So there is definitely, a difference between those. So CLEP exams are a one-time test similar to like an AP test that your student can take and they can get college credit. There are lots of different options for CLEP exams and they only cost, I think the last time I looked, it was like $80, which is nothing compared to the cost of taking an actual college class. And there are lots of different classes they can take it on. So I was kind of looking ahead to see what types of CLEP exams were out there that matched up with coursework that we were going to be doing potentially in the 11th grade and the 12th grade. If your student wants to do an AP course, there are ways for homeschoolers to take AP courses. They have to be taught by an AP certified teacher. So a lot of times you have to do that either like virtually through a program, or if your school district allows a student to come in and take an AP course, that might be an option. Dual enrollment is when they're getting credit both for college and for high school. And again, it's up to you whether or not that's something that you feel comfortable having your student doing. If you want them to do it online, if you want them to go in person. We had looked into dual enrollment, and my daughter definitely didn't want to do anything on campus. And so we actually opted to pick coursework this year that she can take a CLEP exam for next summer. So she'll get the college credit as long as she does well enough on that CLEP exam. And then next year we'll probably look into more like online dual enrollment courses. But it's a good time to start doing some research on that. Don't feel like you have to do it with like a major university. A lot of times there are local schools, the smaller local schools that will offer it, and that course credit will be taken almost anywhere. And I know we have a college system here in our town that actually has several homeschool open houses where they have you come in and they talk about their dual enrollment program and the different offerings they have for homeschoolers. So it's good to do that research near the kind of the end of the 10th grade year as I was planning the curriculum for the 11th grade year. All right, it feels like we're on the final stretch now. We're getting to the 11th grade year. Now, this has so far been a big year for us already. So a couple of things that we have needed to tackle. So first of all, if your student's going to take the PSAT, that is often taken in the fall of the junior year. And those are set up with local school systems. So usually you have to call your local schools that are offering the PSAT and ask them if they have a spot that you can get your student in. If you don't get them in for the PSAT, that's no big deal. The PSAT scores aren't sent to colleges, but it is a good way for them to get a feel for what the SAT might look like. And there can be scholarships available based on your PSAT scores. So if it's something you're looking into, definitely start watching for those dates to be released, like late summer, August, very early September. And if you're looking to get a spot at a local school for that test, start calling early because those spots do fill up fast and schools don't always have a lot of open spots available. The next thing to think about is, of course, the SAT, ACT, or both. If you're going to have your student take that, you might consider doing some SAT, ACT prep work. That can be something like doing a workbook that they're working on over the next couple of months, or you might choose to do an online course. So we're doing an online it does both ACT and SAT prep, so that way she'll be ready for both exams. And it took a bit to do some research and decide which one was a good fit for us, because we wanted something that was going to be self-paced and not cost a fortune. I mean, we still wanted it to be good, but we also, didn't want to break the bank for it. And they can be quite pricey depending on the program. And in the coming weeks, we'll have a video up telling you about the one that we chose in a little more detail. But getting started on that, because they are self-paced, they're designed typically to kind of test where your student is at currently and provide them with things to review and do, and oftentimes several practice exams, like full-length practice exams, so they can feel really confident before they go and take the SAT or ACT. Now, the SAT and ACT are typically taken for the first time in the spring of the junior year, and there's always the option to retake them if needed. So those are some things related to testing to do. As far as colleges, this is also a good year to start really narrowing down that potential college list. You might not have it down to just like 1 or 2, but maybe you've gotten your list down to like 6 or 7 potential. And you might consider doing an initial college visit or 2. This can be just to give your student an idea of what life on that college campus is going to look like. And if you're going to do that, I would recommend maybe trying out several different types of ones. Like if they've got a large school on their list and a small school on their list, visit both, because they might have really wanted that large school and get to that campus and say, oh man, this is like crazy. No. And they might, or vice versa, they may have wanted a small school, but they get there and they're like, I don't know if this is the right fit for me. But it does really help give them an idea on what college life is going to look like. What's dorm room life going to look like? What are the classrooms going to be like? It's also a great way to narrow down the list of schools that you have to look at admission requirements for, because again, every school can be different. I mean, there's some general things that all schools will ask for, but some schools might require the SAT. Others might just say it's recommended. Some might require 4 years of science with labs, and some might only require 3. But by narrowing down that list, you can start really researching those schools more in depth and finding out what their specific requirements are. Now, as I mentioned, my oldest is only in the 11th grade. So everything I'm going to talk about from here on out are not things that we've actually done, but this is what our game plan is for her remaining year of school. Now, when we get towards the end of the 11th grade year, this is when we are going to start considering if she wants to do any job shadowing opportunities or internships in those fields that she's interested in studying. So again, we've had that conversation every year about potential things she wants to study. And in fact, it was only this past summer where she finally said, hey, I think this is what I want to do. And from that, I had to make some tweaks into what classes we were doing her junior year and what we're planning for her senior year. And that's why it's important to have those conversations every year. We've also got to really narrow down that college list. So we know several out-of-state schools that we're really interested in. We will be doing a couple more tours of schools here in state in the next couple of months. And so the hope is that by the end of her junior year, we have a solid list of schools that we know she's going to want to apply for. The other thing that we're going to be tackling in the coming months is starting to do some scholarship research. You can start looking into scholarships far earlier than what we have, but we're going to start looking for things that she might qualify for or that she can apply for beyond just the things that the different colleges might offer as far as like academic scholarships or sports scholarships. But what are other things that are out there that she can qualify for? There are some great scholarship search engines out there where you can put in your students' specific information, things about them, and it will actually kick out a list of scholarships they may be eligible for, and then they can pick and choose which ones they are going to apply to. So we're going to be doing some research on that in the coming months and kind of deciding which ones she's going to be working towards. And then kind of going back to the CLEP exams, at the end of her junior year, she'll be taking a CLEP exam for several of her courses, and hopefully we'll be earning some college credit from those. And now we are at the end of the roadmap. We are entering the senior year. Now we anticipate the fall of the senior year to be the busiest part of that year. If we aren't happy with SAT, ACT scores, we will plan to have them retake those in the fall of their senior year. The fall of the senior year is typically when the FAFSA opens up. Now, this year is a little different because the FAFSA is getting reworked and might not be available until January, but typically it's available and open for you to fill out as early as October. And it's recommended that you fill that out as soon as you can. That way, all of your financial information is entered in, and that can help determine your colleges are going to need to have that while they determine their financial aid packages, and you'll need that if you're getting any student loans. So the earlier you can fill out the FAFSA, the better. Fall of the senior year is also going to be the time where we'll do any final college visits. So any schools that we haven't gotten to yet, or any schools that she wants to revisit before making a decision on applying, we want to try to get those in early so that way she has it in her mind which schools it is that she wants to apply to. We'll do final checks of the requirements for admission for those schools and make sure that we are going to be able to check all those boxes before the end of her senior year. One of my big responsibilities will be to make sure that I've got that transcript filled out and ready to go. Now, I have been adding to our transcript every single year throughout their high school years, but I'm going to want to go back and make sure that I have everything in correctly, that I've calculated the GPA correctly, and that I haven't missed anything. So just double checking, making sure that's done. For my daughter and my son, it'll be them working on making sure that they have got their personal essays started. There's no reason to put that off to the last minute. They can get started on those early, and that way we have time to look them over and do some editing and make sure that it's right where they want it to be. If the schools are going to require letters of recommendation, the fall is also a good time to start seeking those out. From coaches, from people from your church, from people that they've worked with, maybe if they've done an internship or a shadowing experience, someone they know from co-op, but finding a couple of people willing to write letters of recommendation and giving them adequate notice of those so that way you can have those ready before you're sending out your college applications. Then it's time to do all of the applications. So applications for scholarships, if not already done, and then the applications to the individual schools. Now, every school will have different deadlines for admission. A lot of them will offer like an early decision deadline where you can apply early, and if they offer you a spot, then, you know, like you're guaranteed that spot. Or like you have to commit early. They might have like a deadline in like October for one, December for another, and then further forward. So you should definitely check out the individual schools and see what their different deadlines are. If there's a school your student really, really, really wants to go to, that should be the one that they apply to the earliest, because you want to try to get that information in ahead of other applicants and try to get your spot guaranteed. And then, you know, definitely make sure that you've got a couple of backup schools in mind in case that first one doesn't pan out. And so that's why it's important to have all those other pieces in place early. If you're applying really early, remember that like their senior year transcript isn't going to be all the way done, right? Because they're still in progress with it. So you're going to need to show on there what courses they're going to be taking through their senior year and just not have a grade yet because they're not completed. And then the schools will later on want a finalized transcript with that estimated graduation date. So hopefully at the end of this process, I've got 2 kids off to college and I can breathe a sigh of relief knowing I did everything I could to help get them there. Now, as I mentioned, this is not the end-all be-all of college roadmaps or timelines. This is simply what our family has been doing on a year-to-year basis, so that way we feel like we're taking baby steps towards getting them to college and not having too much to do all at once. And so far, I feel like we've been doing pretty well, and we'll of course take you along for the journey for the next year and a half as I get the first one hopefully off to college. Now, if you have any questions for me about specific curriculum we've done, or details about any of the things I've talked about, drop a comment down below and I'll definitely get back to you with that information. I will also link in the description box for you any videos I referenced today. So do the order of courses matter, the transcript ones, the college visits, the NCAA, all of those. I'll put those down below for you. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up before you go. If you're not a subscriber, hit that subscription button and that notification bell so you can follow along with our homeschooling through high school journey. As always, I appreciate you guys being here today, and happy homeschooling.